Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
All right, so good to be with all of you. A gift to have those of you physically present as well as all of you online. It's great to start the new year here at the Way of Compassion Dharma Center. We had 2 weeks off due to Christmas and New Year's, and now we're beginning this year with a new text. This is how to meditate on the stages of the path, and essentially it's a guidebook to all the key topics in the stages of the path, Lam Rim, to enlightenment. And I thought with our previous text, we really had an opportunity to dig deeply in approaching the Buddhist path, understanding Buddhist worldview, a lot of understanding around the mind and emptiness, the importance of virtue. And I think we really got some good overall in-depth information, types of practice. And now I think it's an opportunity to just really zero in and build a foundation that will allow us to really ripen the qualities within. And so that's what the Lam Rim is really all about. It's about structured organization of all the teachings of the Buddha. Literally, I mean, actually, even how to set up an altar, how to sit, and what are the topics to meditate on, all the way through awakening and completely into Buddhahood. So really wonderful opportunity then to have this presented in a way that that allow us to just take our time with each topic, build that foundation, and cultivate these qualities in our own hearts and minds. Those of you who have gotten the book, you may have noticed there's quite a bit in the beginning about the origins of the teachings, about Tisha and so forth, and all the Sankappa, and how these teachings came together. There's a nice portion in there about how to approach it in a traditional way, the sort of practices one would do to meditate on these topics from a Tibetan perspective. So a lot of background information in the first couple of chapters. My hope and aspiration, my intention for our time together as we go through these topics is to bring it together at 4 different types or levels of approaches. And so in the text, you may have read about 3 levels. And that's typically, you speak, 3 scopes, 3 sort of motivations or levels. And then Lam Rim is broken down into certain topics at the sort of beginning level, intermediate level, and then, the greater level. And level's tricky. I don't like the word. It's really just practices that suit a particular motivation. And so we can approach it as someone who is wanting to engage in Buddhist practice. Typically, the standard is to have a good rebirth, yeah, and so that you live this life, you don't waste this life, that you have a good rebirth, sort of this foundational motivation. Second one is that you'd like to be liberated, you'd like to be free of samsara, you'd like to achieve liberation. And then the third would be to become a Buddha, essentially, fully awakened Buddha. And so these are the standard 3 motivations. I think that's a better framing. And the point is to be at the motivation we're at. It's not, okay, well, I should just be the bodhisattva motivation. And it's pretty interesting. It's often very difficult to have a bodhisattva motivation. We can sit here and uh, dedicate our lives for the benefit of all beings, that we'll do anything for all beings. We don't want any being to be free of suffering. We'll go through, all rebirths for all sentient beings. And then they want to borrow my car. And I'm like, no, that's too much. You're not borrowing my car. And so you start thinking, okay, maybe I'm not quite bodhisattva motivation, And so it's a lot more realistic and helpful to kind of be where we are and maybe have an aspiration to cultivate these qualities of a bodhisattva. But so those are the common three, and then the fourth is the one that I think is really what brings most of us here, and that is to not suffer as much in our human life. I think it's an appropriate motivation. I think it's how most people find the Dharma. Is we don't want to suffer, and we would like to live in a way that's has more well-being, more resiliency, a little more joy and peace of mind, and I think that's truthfully why most humans find their way to the Dharma, and that's a perfectly fine motivation. So, with that in mind, I'd like to approach each topic that is suitable for someone who is a human being, wants to suffer less, wants to live a meaningful life, doesn't know about rebirth or multiple lives, and but wants to use these lessons and wisdoms on the causes of suffering and well-being in their life in a way that's meaningful, as well as someone who does have a sense of rebirth and wants to make sure they don't waste this life, as well as someone who would really like to be dedicated to liberation, as well as someone who has really cultivated bodhicitta motivation. So that's the task in hand, that we'll go through these topics and focus on the aspects that can meet us where we're at and that you can use in your life right here, right now. So that's my little intro. So I invited before break to get the book, if you can get the book, and go through those first couple of chapters. Where I would like us to pick up with is on the foundational initial topics. And the idea here is there's directions in here on each topic and how to meditate on each topic. So this is the approach where I'd like us to go over how we would meditate on each topic, what the topic is, and then during the week, that will be your practice. And it says, we think about meditation on a topic, but the idea is to bring that meditation into your life. Not simply, I did the meditation, but we're going to spend a lot of time in our day not in meditation. And that's where we're going to really get to see and experience the results of what we're discovering and build up a really solid foundation. So that seem reasonable for everyone? Are we up for that? Okay, you got some head nods, got a little thumbs up from Greta. I think we're looking pretty good. Okay, so in the text, they went right to the nature of mind. I think we spent quite a bit of time on that. Key points to it is that our minds are actually something that is by nature actually clear. By nature, it's not contaminated. Its very nature is luminous. Its very nature is pure, and within that purity, there's all these sort of contaminations, habits, conditionings, overlays that that we live with. And that conditioning and the way we make sense of the world, and what we call karma and klesha, karma and mental afflictions. Well, that's the overlay and the conditioning, and it's the lens through which we experience things. And the idea is that as we change karma and reduce afflictions, more of that natural radiance of the mind is available. And it's my analogy is like cleaning the windshield, and but underneath all that is our Buddha nature. Underneath that is our primordial wisdom. It's always there. It's always available. It's not harmed. And on top of that is this conditioning. And so Buddhism is about working with that conditioning and liberating our mind in that sense. So what they want you to know is that the mind is changeable, the mind is trainable, and we can engage in practices that transform our conventional mind to have access to that primordial mind. So I think we've spent over the last 3 texts, quite a bit of time on that. And so that's actually going to be something that is just a view that we have, that we hold up. There's a view. Is it true? Is it not true? Well, that's what we need to discover. And we don't, simply because this is what's stated in Buddhism, we don't just say, oh, of course, that's the way it is. It's, oh, okay, well, that's the information they're giving us. Let's see if that holds up. Is there, an awareness that I have that can be aware of the thoughts, that can be aware of the sensations of the body, that can simply be aware without all of that elaboration? And can it observe it? And so it's nice to start experimenting with that sometimes and start to notice, wow, my thoughts, my habits, my condition are all very interdependent, all very transient. They come and they go. But, you may notice that your awareness is always there. It's just always there. And as soon as we go to direct our attention somewhere, we can be aware of that. It's just always there. And so that's kind of a helpful thing, to start noticing the difference between awareness and just my thoughts and my actions and my feelings. That I actually can be aware of those events, whether they're tactile or mental. So understanding that it's kind of just the view that they're inviting to explore as we engage in this path, because ultimately in Buddhism, enlightenment is nothing other than freeing the mind. I mean, it's the mind that wakes up, which basically it's not really waking up, it's removing the obscurations. That's all. Having said that, it's not easy because we are pretty habituated, and a lot of entrenched habits and conditioning that's been there for a while. So that's the opening intro to the view that they're inviting. And then we get right down to basics, and here we build the foundation. And remember, Buddhism is only interested in one thing, and that's the truth. That's all. As a matter of fact, that's what liberates us, the truth. There's, you don't need to believe in a lot of things. You just need to know the truth. And everything that is offered are skillful methods at having a direct experience of your ultimate nature, the nature of existence. It's the truth. And so different traditions and lineages have different practices that help do that. And the Lam Rim is this really thoughtful approach of really building a structure and a direct path. of allowing all those qualities to develop and allow that realization to come. And so typically, if you're in the older times, you would get a teaching on this one topic, and you'd go away for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and meditate on it. So you'd analyze it. You get the teaching, 3 wisdoms. You get the teaching, you'd analyze, contemplate, think about the teaching, do analytical meditations on the teaching. Then you'd get some realization of that. And then you'd meditate on that realization. You let it just soak in. And when that's solid, then you come back to the teacher and go, okay, here's what I'm getting. Teacher goes, nah, you need some more meditation on that. Or, okay, we'll go to the next topic. So we're going to do that, except you don't get 3 months, you get 1 week. And so you need to buck up and get your realizations in there, okay? And, what we're going to do is get a little taste as we go. So we'll start with then the first topic here, which is the rare and precious human birth. So I'll pop that up in the text. And it's framed here as the precious human life. Having gained this rare ship of freedom and fortune, hear, think, and meditate unwaveringly, night and day, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. This is the practice of the Bodhisattvas. And so those of you who do the morning practice with me, we do 2 verses very similar to this every morning. And this rare ship of freedom and fortune, those are these qualities that describe a rare and precious human birth favorable to Dharma practice. And so there's 8 fortunes, 10 freedoms. I think that's the way it works. No, yeah, 5, yeah, I think it's that way. And so this is that opening quote. This is the opening statement. And so the foundation here is first to take a look at just how incredible an opportunity this is, right? This rare and precious human birth favorable to Dharma practice. One of the most beautiful and inspiring teachings in Mahayana Buddhism is that of Buddha nature. Every living being's potential to transform themselves, emerge from suffering and confusion, and become fully enlightened. Although this potential abides in all of us, special circumstances are needed to actualize it, and a precious human life provides the ideal situation for this spiritual work. A precious human life is not just any human life, but one having 18 aspects, 8 freedoms, and 10 fortunes. All right, I had it backwards. So it's 8 freedoms, 10 fortunes, which will be explained in one of the meditations following. So the traditional meditation would list all of them. Being endowed with these means that we possess the most conducive outer and inner conditions for practicing the Dharma and following the path to enlightenment. Such a life is rare. Among the countless beings in existence, only a small number have such conditions. The purpose of meditating on precious human life is to check whether to realize how fortunate we are. Then we generate joyful energy to use our life to benefit ourselves and others. Meditating on this topic is also an effective antidote to depression, feelings of hopelessness or unworthiness, or confusion about the purpose of life. So already just laying out the benefits of recognizing this. Here, this topic is divided into 4 separate meditations. The first, and that's what we'll be focusing on, is recognizing a precious human life. It explores the criteria and significance of such a life. So that'll be our task. Next, we'll get into how a precious human life is meaningful. Looks at the beneficial ways we can use our life. With the third, how a precious human life is rare and difficult to attain. We learn why it is difficult to be born in such a situation, how there is no guarantee we will attain another one in our next life. So that one's there to scare you, okay? Wake you up. And then the fourth and final meditation in this section is on the 8 worldly concerns, factors in our mind that can interfere with the spiritual path and lead us to waste our precious human life. So those are the 4 aspects of recognizing a precious human life, and we'll do a little exploration on her invitation to explore it from this 4-fold approach that we talked about. So I really like this opportunity. 2 ways to meditate on this topic are presented. So there is a traditional method that she will explain, but first a non-traditional. So this allows much more opportunity to kind of reach us where we live and in ways that we've grown up in our cultures. So the first is a non-traditional reflection on the excellent conditions and opportunities of our present life, aimed at dispelling any feelings of despair or depression that we might have and replacing them with appreciation and gratitude. It does not involve reflecting on rebirth and other realms of existence, and thus offers an opportunity to engage with this topic for people who have difficulty accepting those aspects of the Buddhist teachings. The second is a traditional presentation of the 18 characteristics that define a precious human life, the 8 freedoms and 10 fortunes. So it's really nice. We're going to focus on the non-traditional. And so here's the explanation. So this would be literally what you would bring to mind. And again, important to note the difference. Like we just did a meditation as we started. We did a shamatha meditation. Shamatha meditation is concentration, and it allows us to focus, right? We're not thinking about anything. We're developing attention. We're developing concentration, the presence of mind, the mindfulness, that capacity to be present, to tame and train the mind, creating that capacity of the mind. These meditations are what we call analytical meditations, sometimes also called contemplative. So they're like, let's think about this. So we're gonna like sit in a meditation, take a little time, get to the breath, get focused, and then you literally bring these thoughts to mind and reflect upon them and sort them out. So very different approach, right? We're actually thinking, we're analyzing, we're bringing things to mind on purpose, we're checking them. So I find it's helpful a lot of times just to talk about it, think about it, and then do a little meditation, a little time each morning to go after it on your own. Okay. But it doesn't replace shamatha. It's an additional piece. So we'll just skip that first paragraph. That's offering you how you'd settle in. So once you're kind of settled, grounded, rested on the breath, start by checking how you feel about yourself and your life. Do you often feel unhappy or dissatisfied? Do you ever think that life is meaningless or hopeless? Such feelings may indicate that we do not recognize how fortunate and precious our life is. We do not realize the wonderful potential that we have. So we kind of explore this. How do I feel about my life? Is it meaningful? Do I get depressed? Does it feel hopeless? Um, is there any joy? Is there no joy? Does it feel like a lot of work? Just how am I checking in with my life? And, am I like grateful to wake up every day? Or am I like, there's another day I have to deal with, you know? So just kind of checking on its status. Then we bring to mind, okay, abiding within each person at all times. So in this case, abiding within yourself is our Buddha nature. The mind is by nature clear and pure and has the potential to become enlightened. The state of being free of all disturbing thoughts and emotions and fully perfected in all positive qualities such as love, compassion, and wisdom. No matter how confused, deluded, and negative that we may feel sometimes, our Buddha nature is always there. It can never be lost or damaged. Okay, so that's again that view, that framework. Underneath all of this, this Buddha nature is always there, and it's always going to be. So, what a wonderful reflection. Let that awareness sink deep within you. Allow it to bring lightness and joy to your mind. That it is there, even if I don't feel good about who I am. That Buddha nature is always there. So we take a little time to think about that, and it might just brighten our mind. Although all beings have potential for enlightenment, due to their circumstances, most are unable to recognize and develop it. For example, animals face many difficulties simply staying alive, even those in comfortable conditions, such as pet dogs and cats, lack the intelligence needed to understand basic teachings like karma, how to refrain from non-virtue and engage in virtue. This makes it almost impossible for them to create the causes for better rebirths in future lives, much less for enlightenment. As human beings, we're in a much better situation than animals. With our human intelligence, we can understand karma, ethics, and other aspects of the spiritual path and start practicing them. See if you can appreciate how fortunate you are to have a human body and mind rather than those of an animal. And here, rather than, I just kind of look at the distinction between a human and animal is how much choice we have. Animals have very little choice, right? They're in survival mode. And if you're an animal and you're even a pet, do you get a good owner? Do you get one who's not? You're just at the whim of your environment at all times. If you're, a deer, how do you survive? You're always on alert. And, a lot of people don't appreciate skunks, they don't even want to hang out with you. And so as an animal, you don't have a lot of choice about anything, really. You're just trying to stay alive. And as a human, we have quite a bit of choice. We have quite a bit of opportunity to create different conditions in our lives. So even on that level, before even thinking about Dharma or practicing anything, we can see a lot of benefit there. So the idea is to appreciate first that I do have a human body and mind. But even among human beings, not everyone has ideal conditions to develop their potential for enlightenment. Imagine, for example, being born in an impoverished family in a country suffering from famine, drought, or war. Even if you knew about the path to enlightenment and wished to practice it, most of your time and energy would be spent simply trying to keep yourself and your family alive. You would have little time to think of anything else, such as spiritual practice. So yeah, there's people in countries that don't have any, they're in survival. Sudan, different places. Look at the Ukraine right now. You can look here in the United States, big cities. We can look at people who have, born in abusive families. We don't have to go to faraway lands. And we can even look at people with great wealth, but abusive families and environments that are dysfunctional. And just all around, you're going to see that a lot of people don't have any opportunity or access. And that's the next point here. Other people don't have access to spiritual teachings that explain enlightenment, how to attain it. Imagine spending your life in a remote village in the forest or mountains, cut off from the rest of the world, with no opportunity to learn about your potential for enlightenment. Well, imagine living in Ohio. As a monk, and when you travel, we spend a lot of time in Ohio. We spend time, across the country, and there's so many places in the United States that have no access to Buddhist centers, Buddhist teachings, the Dharma, to any sense of community. Those of us here online, many of us are remote, right? And so think about the people in your area, and any access there. So a lot of people don't, and then there might be a Buddhist center, but it may not be a qualified teacher, or just so many things that people are exposed to. So some people don't have access to spiritual teachings that really offer the path. And not just Buddhist, even other spiritual teachings that really offer a path. So just keeping that in mind. And some people live in prosperous, developed countries where they could learn and practice spiritual teachings, but they're not interested. They are preoccupied by other affairs, accumulating wealth, property, and possessions, acquiring worldly knowledge or skills, and just experiencing as much pleasure as possible. It may never occur to them that these things will be left behind when they die, like a dream that vanishes when we wake up, and that only their mind will continue into the next life. Think of people who have such attitudes that appreciate the fact that you recognize the value of spiritual teachings and practice. So we're looking at, first and foremost, in this meditation, that we have this human form, but then we look at humans. How many humans do we know that are interested in spiritual practice? How many that are even interested actually act upon it? And how many of those who might be interested, might act upon it a little bit, fade away from it? I mean, you just look around at all of these billions of humans, over 8 billion. There's a percentage, very small, that actively engage in spiritual practice. And even now, in our culture, even churches are in mass decline here in the United States. And there's a growing interest in just worldly concerns, in getting by, getting things, getting stuff, and that trap of thinking that those things are going to provide some happiness. And it's such a trap, we have a treatment center here in our town, which have pretty wealthy people that come. And their addiction and other mental and emotional issues and traumas and co-occurring disorders, and they are full. They're full. And they came from wealthy families with resources, with access to things. And so you can look around and can see how in the world that we're living, how much, just now in the world that we're living, how common it is for people to have therapists, how common it is for people to talk about their trauma, how common it is for people to have stress or have burnout, and that it's just commonplace. in this world that we're living in, right? And so out of all these humans, some of them do have some resources, some don't. Some have access to teaching, some don't. Some could have complete access living right next door to them, and have no interest at all. And then here, some people even use their lives in destructive ways, committing violent crimes or scams, producing and selling illegal drugs, being abusive, not realizing that these actions are harmful to themselves as well as to others and will bring even more suffering in the future. Recognize your good fortune in being interested in spiritual practice, using your life to benefit yourself and others. And so we start going, wow, at least I know the causes of suffering. It's virtue. And I can see the suffering that people are creating in their own lives through non-virtue. And so we have this understanding, and others don't. Now think about the advantages you have. You are a healthy human being with a mind that can appreciate and understand Dharma. You have opportunities to learn about the path to enlightenment from compassion and wise spiritual teachers, and the wish to learn and practice this path. You have sufficient resources, allowing you time to study, practice the Dharma, and there are people who care about and support you. Family members, friends, spiritual teachers. So it's like, wow, this is all available. This is ripened. It's very precious. The path of awakening is literally under my feet. Everything is available. And I'm ready for it. And then she says, but your mind might object. Yes, I know I'm fortunate, but my life's not perfect. I've got lots of problems. This may be true, but everyone in samsara has problems, even the rich and famous. If you think about the difficulties many others face, you might realize that your troubles are relatively minor and manageable. It's interesting what we compare ourselves to. We compare ourselves to someone who has that nice house, or do we compare ourselves to that person who doesn't even have a bike? Which life am I comparing? The fact that my car broke down compared to someone who doesn't have vision. Really fascinating, I think, how our mind, in comparison, doesn't always do a very good job to recognize we're in samsara, everybody's suffering, everything's messy, and you actually have a prescription to be well. You might think about the difficulties, others may face me. Okay, most problems are temporary and are not necessarily bad. It depends on how we view them. There are methods for using difficulties in our spiritual practice, helping us progress on the path. Some of these will be explained in the meditation on the perfection of patience. And it's always helpful to remember that you have the potential to become free forever from all the difficulties and their causes, and help others do the same. So that's the idea, that take some time, really look at the life that you have, the opportunities you have. What differentiates you as a rare and precious human birth to just a human birth? And how many things had to ripen for you to be here in this moment, to have access, to have an interest, to have teachers, to have the path of awakening, in your hand. Pretty rare, very fortunate. And then, it points out that, at the end, the idea is if you contemplate these points, well, it gives rise to joy, or at least an appreciation for good fortune that you have in this life. Keep your mind focused on that positive experience for several minutes to familiarize your mind with it, and then finally conclude the meditation by making a resolution to use your precious human life in ways that are meaningful and beneficial both for yourself and to all other beings, and dedication. So the invitation every day this week then is to take a little time to distinguish this rare and precious human birth, favorable to Dharma practice, just a human birth or to any other life. And you know what I think the biggest objection pops up to in people's minds, or some of the biggest struggle in this practice, is that as you start to recognize how fortunate you are, you start feeling bad for everybody else. And you almost feel guilty about having a fortunate life. So it's a tricky situation, right? It's like, wow, I have this complete path of awakening, and others don't, and you almost feel sort of guilty about it, and others are suffering, and I have this, and then the inevitable is, and I'm not using it right, and that's the wrong direction. You actually have to be using it right to have it. And so as we brighten our mind, as we recognize our fortune, we're also recognize that as we develop this, we are cultivating a greater capacity to help others. We're creating potentials and capacities that everyone that we encounter to be an example, to create a better condition for others, that we have an impact on the world, one in which we cannot have if we're not cultivating these qualities. And so as you engage in this, it's important to have the freedom to just focus on the good qualities. That's it. We're not focused on the responsibilities. We're just focused on the good qualities. As we get into the other points, we'll recognize it, these other attributes. But to really recognize that by having this fortune, human birth favorable to Dharma practice, we're already benefiting the world, right? We're making a difference. And one of the analogies I used, I was thinking about last night, we're at dinner with some folks, and we're talking about, I was talking about in recovery in AA, there was the two founders there, two men, they had a conversation. They met, they had a call, they went to visit, and they had this meeting, and these two men met, and they decided to see if they could help each other get sober, and then they wanted to help others get sober. And that formed Alcoholics Anonymous. Two men having a conversation. How many millions of lives have changed, right? All these people found sobriety. All these families got healed. Kids got their parents back, and families got reunited. Things improved in those lives, but how many other lives were improved because someone didn't get in a car drunk today? We all benefited from someone not using today. And we don't know how because someone else didn't get in a car under the influence. How many lives are impacted, right? And so now think about how many lives are impacted because we're not engaged in resentment and anger and frustration and the self-centeredness and the obscurations, the things that really limit us from being helpful and kind and present with people, and the kindness and compassion that we bring into our interactions, the way that we get to cultivate our hearts and minds. There's these ripples effects that are beyond what we can see or know. And so it's really having that understanding of interdependence, of indirectly, without our knowing, how we're improving literally, not just every interaction we have, all the interactions we don't have, because we're not driving in a rage, you know, and because we're not distracted, you know, and hurting someone. There's a lot of people we're helping by not interacting in harmful ways, and so it's really understanding that as we get healthier, as we get well, as we cultivate these qualities, the world's a better place in a myriad of ways, and we're helping people. So don't catch yourself with that. I'm wasting this precious human life. I'm not living up to my potential. Other people, don't have what I have. Look what I'm doing. I'm watching Netflix again. You know, not helpful, right? We're meeting ourselves where we're at. We're taking steps in a direction, and we're slowly letting go of some of the things that are not going to be that valuable in our lives. And we're cultivating some things that are a little more valuable. But it's a much more integrated and organic process. That this just becomes much more interesting than some of the other things we used to find interesting. And those become less interesting, And so really meeting ourselves where we're at. So I'm going to pause there. Quite a bit of reading, nice, quite a bit of intro, and just kind of check in, see if anyone has any questions or thoughts about this beginning practice. Okay, Greta.
Did you say, Greta, my service broke up?
I did. Yeah, your hand was up.
Yay. All right. Thank you for explaining that. It's gonna sound kind of like a bizarre question, maybe not bizarre, I don't know, but when I'm meditating, I'm thinking like, okay, how much time do I spend in shamatha and how much time do I spend in contemplation? I know you said like a couple of minutes, but 20 minutes is quite a bit of time, and it would be helpful to know how to distribute that time more specifically between shamatha and the contemplation.
Yeah, that didn't sound bizarre at all. It sounds like an appropriate, thoughtful question.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So first off, how much time do you have? It's always good. And so in the morning, yeah, you don't want to be rushed. And then, let's say your comfort level, let's say is around 20 minutes. Is that when you're kind of
I'm
working?
usually like 30 minutes, but
Okay, yeah. And, if you got 30 minutes, wouldn't be bad to kind of do half and half, 15 minutes, shamatha, settle in, and then 15 into this. Though I think you could probably do this meditation, the analytical part, in about 10. But it depends, where you're at, so you play with it a little bit. You want to have a little time to really reflect on things, but you'd be amazed how much contemplation you can do in 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, you can really kind of go through these thoughts and sit with them. And the idea is to really, in this sense, brighten that mind with this opportunity of this life and go through things. So I do think this analytical meditation, if you had 10 minutes of that'd be good. And whatever other time you have with shamatha. Because shamatha is so important because it is probably, as a matter of fact, I had a very similar practice to shamatha described by a therapist, specializing in anxiety and everything, and worry. And it's really what he's describing is basically a concentration practice, a training of attention is like the most beneficial thing you can do for anxiety. The capacity to attend to what you choose to instead of have the mind drag you around to worry, the fear, the thing to be anxious about, all that. The capacity to choose what you attend to and to let that develop. So I just think it's just, really important. So if you had 30 minutes, I'm taking back what I said. I'd say 20 shamatha, 10 on this. If you got
I was gonna,
what's that?
I was gonna say, like, I think it is in my best interest to start out with shamatha because I come into the meditation like with a racing mind. It's already going. The motor is like rapid fire, and I have to like slow down the motor to have any contemplation of like anything substantial, other than just random sporadic chaos, So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll try to see if I can make this a question. You mentioned maybe kind of what I got from you is you get into this practice. I definitely instantly, as you chatted about like how lucky and of an opportunity this is. So instantly I had guilt. Like, wow, I've wasted 46 years of my life and had a lot of opportunity and just getting started and have been not a great human. So how do we kind of not beat ourselves up in that process? Because what I got from you is that it's not wise to maybe beat yourself up as you go down this practice. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not only not wise, it is not based in reality. Those 46 years got you here. Right?
Yeah.
So clearly not wasted. And that's the thing to understand is to have the conditions ripen for a rare and precious human birth. Those conditions were created. So it's through the struggle and the learning from our hardships and our struggles that we actually open the door to be available to these teachings. So those 46 years got you here. It opened the door. I'm pretty sure nobody gets here because they were all bright and shiny and lovable. We get here because we have struggled. We get here because we have, suffered and we've caused suffering. And we've learned from those and we sought to learn to be okay. So those 46 years, not a waste. They're what got you here. Part of what got you here.
Got
it. You should pat yourself on the back.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go, right there. I heard that. Kimber.
Hey, John.
Yeah, Chris or Kimberly. I was gonna say I'm reading Kimberly, but I'm seeing Chris. So I was guessing it was Chris. Yeah. But my tongue was tied.
Well, it took me 60 years, so 47 is pretty awesome. So that, good job there. I was thinking more kind of on Greta's point. I generally do your 34-minute, 36-minute thing. Your practice in the morning, and I'm just wondering, are you recommending that we do this rare and precious life meditation, every day, and then we come back in a week, or should I, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or I'm just looking for a little more structure on this.
Yeah. What I would do if you're doing our current practice, because we kind of tap into rare and precious life, you're literally doing everything that the book suggests you do for a Lam Rim, right? And so you're prepped and you go into meditation. What I would do in that case is I would go right into when it goes to the 20 minutes of silence, I would start with this analytical meditation for a little bit, and then settle, and then finish with shamatha. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And so that's kind of the daily,
Yeah, in
the
the
daily
daily.
grind, and the next week it'll change a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay, right.
yeah.
Right.
That way it fits right in. You don't add any more time. You're prepped for it. You do this, and you may find you only spend 5-8 minutes on this, and the rest would be shamatha.
Right. Thank you.
So for those of you online that do not know, I record daily practice, except Sundays. And that's posted in our community. And there's a shorter one, a longer one. And it goes through all the preparatory practices that are described in the book. Really sets you up nicely. And there's then 20 minutes of silence for, well, normally shamatha, but you could plug this right in. Is the Here and Now Center about to say something?
Yeah. Hi, John.
Hi.
I was just having the thought of, is there a part in the book that you can read and record, like on your phone, and would that play it to yourself as you're meditating as a
Sure.
way to guide yourself through that analytical part?
Yeah. So in here, she's giving you the sort of points to do. So you could record that. She's giving some of her examples, but you may want to make them more your examples. Like some of you may not, be that interested in comparing your life to, an animal that can't practice Dharma. Like that may not connect very well, right? But for you, you might. So as you go through each point, add your own example when you record. It makes it a little more, that you resonate with. So for example, I was just thinking about all the people who have wealth and resources and all the mental and emotional stresses and issues that they have, and that have not met the Dharma. And, so it's kind of nice to make, as you read through, if you're going to record it, or even write it down, have the point, but have your own example. That makes sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
It's Kurt. Exactly how long is it going to take to get to enlightenment if we do this?
Yeah, for you, it's going to be 2 extra weeks and 3 workshops and then 1 follow-up session.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah,
kidding.
you're on fast track. The rest of us, we're going to be here a while. But you're right there.
Thanks for doing this. This is going to be an awesome text, I think. I like the step-by-step. It's like a cookbook. I'm good with cookbooks. I like that. Do this, right?
Yeah.
None of this like kind of airy stuff. It's like, nope, do exactly this and see what happens.
Right.
So, thanks.
Good. So then the suggestion being, and I'm glad you brought that up, Jessica, if we go back here to the text, here we go. And these points are made that think about the advantages you have, healthy human being with a mind that can appreciate and understand Dharma. It's like that would be one of the points. You have opportunities to learn about the path, right? You have sufficient resources allowing you the time to study and practice, right? So a lot of people have none of that, right? They're just in survival mode. You have support groups, so you start thinking about these other people, right, that don't have access to spiritual teachings. They don't have the availability to practice. They don't have the conditions. They don't have an interest, right? It has not ripened. They haven't been exposed to people with teachings. And so you just go through the text here and then a few of the key points, right? You're not suffering from famine, drought, war. In other words, you know, you have enough to eat, you have shelter, you have these conditions. And then make it very, you know, personal, relevant. And I like that little idea. You could even sort of record it to bring it up. Or just, you know, write out some of these key points and recognize. And where I land is distinguishing a rare and precious human birth, favorable Dharma practice, to just a human birth, you know, let alone animals or anything else. And start noticing what's different about that. You know, and you know, primarily, most of the human condition is creating a prison cell for ourselves, right? We're caught up in stress, worry, fear, caught up in 8 worldly dharmas. We're caught up in you know, stress, worry, and fear about getting this or not getting that, and a belief system that, you know, if those things happen, I'm going to be okay. And that's what humanity's doing, right? And whereas whether it's, you know, we talk about Dharma, it's truth. So we can go to Aristotle, right? We're talking about virtue. We're talking about well-being. We're talking about purposeful life. You can talk to Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, and, you know, the quest for meaning and how we can bring meaning to things. In other words, the Dharma is not limited simply to the Buddha Dharma, that there are incredible teachings of Dharma that are available that are not at all being used in our day-to-day lives. And I brought that up, yeah, I was at the retreat, is, you know, we have these in our own culture all around us, the good lessons, you know, all the things I need to learn, I learned in kindergarten, and then we don't do them, right? And so you can kind of see how even though we, as humans, hold certain values and beliefs, that's not our conditioning. And our conditioning is still around comparing ourselves to others, you know, my honor roll student, you know, bumper stickers, and what others have and what I don't have, and how I think I should be and how I'm not, and, you know, and so you can just see the mental and emotional stress, you know, and look out there. How many people do you directly know who really have a sense of well-being and are resilient, wake up fairly positive and caring and kind and nurturing? And so you can start really looking at those distinctions about those of us who are busy creating the prison of samsara, and those that are eliminating the walls and freeing ourselves. And I think those are the opportunities there. And again, not just Buddha Dharma, but just Dharma, good, healthy ways of living with compassion, with kindness, with understanding of interdependence, which is just you know, the foundational stuff that you'd find in really good, solid wellness teachings that are not utilized in our population. You know, I keep always going back to my Little League coach. You've heard me quote 100 times. He taught me, it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. And it's that simple. And yet we care about whether we win or lose. We really care about whether this or that happens. We really, you know, instead of how we show up and how we learn, how we grow, and what we can develop so we can offer. And so starting to really see those distinctions, and just sticking with that, you know, just really sticking with taking that time to recognize how far you have come, whether it was 40 plus years or 60 plus years or whatever it was that got us here, that you have survived everything you've been through. And underneath all of that struggle, you kept seeking a better way of being. And you've created the conditions to be here now. And that's phenomenal. And for us, let's now conclude with a dedication of the time, the merit and wisdom that we have cultivated. That in the midst of samsara, that is filled with tragedy and trauma, it's also filled with rescuers and helpers and compassion that arises. And, I always think of Mr. Rogers, who's always, look at the helpers, the opportunities to be helpful, and the resilience that we can cultivate, and really honor all those out there doing their best to be helpful, and collectively dedicate all of our merit for the benefit of all beings and for our own continued spiritual growth. We may recognize this rare and precious human birth and its value, so we can be of great benefit to all. And for those of you who care to join me in the dedication. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.